For this video, we're going to be using the smooth bleed-proof all-purpose paper. It's Borden and Riley, and this is usually the type of paper that you will use for pen and ink. It is very smooth and has a very nice surface. However, watercolor doesn't necessarily work well for this. If you're going to use this type of paper, I suggest you only decide to use it for black and white drawing. I'm going to be using a thinner nib and a wider nib. Usually these will come in the packets. And I'll also be using my Micron pens. Today we're working on a tree. And in order to do that, we're going to start off with a very light pencil drawing. Trees are very organic, and I'm doing this out of my imagination. So just keep in mind that it's also whatever you feel. You're going to start off with a wider base for your tree. I'm going to start off with a wide base, and it's going to get thinner as it gets to the top. It's going to branch out. Again, it's wider at the base, and then it gets thinner as it gets out. And you can just continue to do that. It's always wider where it hits the main branch. And then I'm going to have these little branches kind of come off. They go and curve to the side. And do the same thing here. So even though the tree is irregular, there are certain principles that will stay true for any tree that you draw. It's always going to be wider at the base. It's always going to taper towards the top. And whenever your branches connect to the tree, it always kind of goes again wider and then thinner as it goes out. Even if you were to do a small, tiny little branch coming off, it still starts off like a funnel where it connects and then it goes out. In terms of where it hits the base, imagine that their roots are going underneath the ground. Even if you don't draw them, they are there. And then do the horizontal line for your earth and sky. This is just a basic structure of a tree. I'm gonna go now and add some line to it. Now you can do this in two ways. I'm going to show you the easy way, at least the easier way. I'm going to start off with a thinner Micron pen. I'm going to go all around my tree and go over the line that I drew. The pen will run very smooth on the paper. I'm selecting a thinner line because I want to make sure that I can, you know, if I make a mistake, it's not going to be super duper. So I'm going over my pencil. If you decide that there's an area that you don't want to incorporate, like here, I just decided to make my branch a little thinner, you can certainly do that. Just go over and create your branches. Branches overlap, and when you reach the end, they kind of go out. They become a little wavy. Not swirly. We're not doing a swirly tree, even though you could if you wanted to. But for this tree, we're doing really thin branches that go out. So you can see when I decide that I want my branch to end, I kind of merge the lines right there. You can see they're coming together. Now, continue doing your line. Decide how your tree ends. And now you can just do overlapping lines for the tiny little branches. After you go with the first pen, you can now switch and get a thicker one. Let's say I'm going to go with a number 1 pen. Certain areas of the tree will be darker than others. The areas where a branch comes out is going to be darker here because it's branching out, and the underneath the branch usually is going to be more shadow. So it's okay to have a darker line underneath. The light usually hits from the top, so the top of the tree will generally be lighter. Again, here it's branching out, so I'm going to darken that area. And right here, where it curves, I'm going to go in underneath all the areas where the tree sprouts a branch. Like so. And then once I've done that, I can decide whether or not I want to continue with the Micron pen or move to my nib. I'm gonna go with my nib. I have my ink ready. And I'm going to start. I'm going to start with strokes that are following the shape of the tree. So for instance here it's kind of curving, so I'm going to go and curve. Remember those lines that kind of mimic each other? That's what we're doing here. We're also going to do that here. It's going to taper off, and I'm going to continue to do these lines. Because the tree is kind of moving. Tree bark has a vertical type of pattern in this, so I've decided to incorporate some of the tree bark, but you can just do little light lines to show the tree bark. So we're gonna go and do some lines. The more variation in line for a tree, the more organic it's gonna look. And also trees tend to have these knobby areas, so if you want to incorporate one, you can certainly do that, like I'm doing here. Where a tree branch breaks off, there's usually like a little area. And now we're going to give the tree branches the shape. We're going to start doing this type of line. It's almost like a inverted C. You're going to start at the base where the line hits, right there. You notice what just happened? I got a little bleed there. I'm going to work with that bleed. I'm certainly not going to change my paper. And then I'm going to continue to give it shape. There's a little bit of a crosshatch happening here. And then I'm going to follow the line of this branch. I go down with it, and then follow it this way. I'm going to continue with my C's as they're coming into the base of the middle of the trunk. They're transforming. They're becoming a little wider. It's turning into a very kind of long curved line. So I'm following the shape of the tree. I'm going up towards this branch, and since I don't have a lot of space here, I'm starting at the edge and I'm bringing in. When I reach this branch, when I'm parallel to this branch, I'm going to extend my line, like so, and then move in and start working on that branch. You can see a little pattern emerging here. And I'm using the nib because I'm looking to give the tree a very kind of curvy shape, organic shape, and the line is going to make it have that. So you press and release. Then I'm going to reach this branch. I'm going to extend my line. And then continue this way. Now these lines that I did, I'm going to extend. And right now what I've done is I've created a little dip in the branch. I'm going to go back to my trunk, add a very thick line here, and then I could explore maybe adding a little hole in the trunk. And these are decisions that you will make as you go. Look and see if there's something that the tree needs. If it's too bare in one area, be spontaneous. Add something. The whole idea of drawing is that you're going to start off with a general image that you think you're working on, but then it evolves. It has its own little life, so you have to work with it. If you try to constrain it within the guidelines of what you started at, it will fight you. So right now I'm separating the trunk. I decided that I want to have a little bit of a branch, a root coming out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an angle here where the branch is coming out. This will be kind of like a hole. And this branch will kind of come out here. So I've added this shape, And now I'm going to go and create my little extension here. Wherever the root is starting to sprout, I'm curving. I'm making it pop out through a line. If I want to incorporate a different root, say I want to do this with my root, I'm creating the shape of the root. Again, it's always wider at the base, and as it comes out, it gets thinner. And then I'm going to add a curved line to go around the shape. So that decision of what exactly you're going to do comes when you realize that there's an area that needs something. Just figure out if it's going to be an object that has shape, or is it going to be a flat object. So for instance, I know that, you know, tree branches have a cylindrical shape, so I'm adding the cylindrical pattern. Here it's meeting the base, so I'm changing the line direction. Now the different angles of lines means different planes, and that's what's giving it the three-dimensionality. When I get to this point, I can go in and decide if this branch right here, this tree is gonna probably have another root and a very wide one here. Now, when it gets to this base, I'm going to curve it until it gets to that point, and the line is going to get smaller. It's going to create an optical illusion. And then I have this area to cover, and this I'm going to go in the opposite direction of this curve. It's going to have a wave pattern. And now, if I want to go in and get it darker, I can, probably at the edges here, at where the branches meet. This is where I'm going to incorporate a little bit of a cross hatch. I'm just going to go over only a little bit. I don't want to destroy the pattern, but in certain areas, like here, and then if I want to go in between these two lines to get it to have some shade, I can do that. Short strokes here, because it's and then on this branch I'm going to incorporate some darker lines here to give it shape. Remember the horizontal line. And then now we can start incorporating some of the background line. I'm going to start at the base and then pick up, press and release. I'm going to go around the tree. Wherever the tree line hits, I'm going to pull up. I'm going to do this pattern first. Now we're going to start with the ground. It's going to be darker behind the tree. All the areas that are in between the roots are going to be darker. And here I'm going to go in a more diagonal. You notice that now it's being separated between the tree and the ground by the texture and the different angled lines. We're going to make this area darker. Now I'm going to do a little bit of vertical lines, kind of create a pattern. Do the same thing over here. And now I have a separation between the two areas. Now I'm going to continue to add some lines, but I'm going to add vertical lines here. So it doesn't matter if it starts getting dark, it'll still be separated because of the directional line. I want to incorporate some larger strokes, and in order to do that I have to move my hand up and down like this. I'm going to switch to my number 1 Micron pen. I'm going to continue to add some lines on the tree, still in a curved manner. I'm going to go over the ones that I did with the nib in some areas. And in the areas where there are these kind of wavy lines, I'm going to try and keep that. At this point, I'm going to add more little tiny branches that overlap. And that's why I'm using this pen. I can kind of go in and quickly add these thin branches that are coming out. And imagine them like hands that are stretching, like fingers that are trying to touch each other. And it's okay to overlap the branches because it happens. I'm going to sprout another little branch. Where the base is wide, I'm going to do a little bit of a curved line, and then it sprouts out. And now I'm going to, if I want to at this point, you can add some leaves, but they don't have to be very, you can just add like little dots, little oval dots, because they're at a distance. So the closer the leaf is to us, the larger it's going to be. The further, the smaller. So this one's closer. We can add one here and here, and they look like tiny, like eyes, kind of. You do one curved line and then another, and there's a leaf, and connected. You're going to do that through the whole piece. Add the lines, the leaf. If you darken in the leaf, that means it's a shaded one, so it's in the background. And then we're going to do, so I'm going to keep doing these leaves. Okay, I added leaves. Now I can go in and do some more lines in the background. I'm going to use a thinner pen, the 005, and I'm going to go in and draw some more background lines. I'm overlapping my leaves and my branches in some areas. You should have some tonal variation in your background. Notice how here it's darker, there's lighter lines here, less lines, so it looks lighter. Again, I went over here where the two branches kind of meet. I'm making this area a little darker, because even if it's the sky or a wall, there's still some variation, some tonal variation in it. And it'll look much more interesting. In order to get the tonal variation, I'm angling my line just slightly. I'm still not overlapping the lines vertical and horizontal, but I am angling a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with the thinnest one. I'm going to do a little bit more line work on the root and add just in between the lines I've made a little bit more. Oh, not everywhere, and just in certain areas. If you want to add more lines to go into your trees, you can do that. You can also do some squiggly lines. And the way you do that to make space look more cluttered is to just do squiggles. And this area is where the leaves are more bushy. Only doing that in certain areas, not everywhere. You can decide where you want more clutter And there you have it. There's your tree.